We'll just start with step number one, which is to determine your budget. So first and foremost, before you even think about where you want to go, you have to figure out how much you're willing and able to spend on your trip, because this will really determine where you're actually able to travel to, how long you can afford to go for, and all sorts of things like that. So the first thing you want to do is to try to get a ballpark estimate of how much money you have to work with. And then the next thing I would do is, one, check the cost of transportation from your home to that place. So whether that's a flight, a train, a bus, whatever it is, look into how much it's going to cost to get there, because that can really determine whether you're actually able to travel there. So if you're looking for a flight, two of my favorite sites are Skyscanner and Kiwi.com. So I usually just hop on their apps and figure out what a round trip flight would look like, what the average cost is, and that's a pretty good indicator of whether you can even afford to travel there. And then the next thing I do is check the average price of accommodation in the place that I'm interested in going to. So the average hotel price. I will hop on Booking.com or Airbnb and just kind of get an idea of whether there's anything affordable. Step number two, which is to figure out what the goal of your trip is. Do you want to have an action-packed adventure? Do you want to have a very relaxing, revitalizing vacation? What is the goal of your trip? This will help you with the planning process, because you can really focus on the best things to plan for what you want to actually bring home with you at the end of your trip. Step number three is just to do your research. But I did want to mention a few things that are very important to research before you leave your home country. For one, you should definitely look up whether there are any visa requirements, because a lot of countries you wouldn't think you need a visa for, especially if you're American or if you have a passport that tends to be very free traveling. But you need a visa for Vietnam, for example. You can't get one on arrival. You need one for Australia. You need one for tons of countries. And you have to apply a few days before you leave for that country. So tons of places you can get a visa on arrival. Usually they're valid for 30 to 90 days depending, but definitely look into visa requirements before you just book your ticket. Another thing is, you are going to a new place, and if you're going to a country far away from home, you should probably make sure that, one, the place is safe, especially if you're traveling alone. Another really important thing is to look into the cultural standards in the country that you're traveling to. For example, remember, when you're traveling to someone else's country, you are a visitor in their country, and it is your job to respect their culture. Look into it. And moving on into step number four, which is to create a loose itinerary. So it totally depends on what kind of trip you're taking. Again, if you just want to go chill on a beach for a week, then you shouldn't really have to do a ton of planning as far as creating a itinerary goes. But if you are planning on kind of traveling more and moving from place to place, it probably is a good idea to plan at least a little bit day by day. But my rule of thumb is, if the trip is 10 days or less, then I try to plan about one thing that is to book your flight, or if you're not flying, your transportation, and book your accommodation. So I would definitely recommend booking your flight if you're flying far in advance. Not too far, but you can definitely save some money if you book at least like 3 weeks in advance. I think 3 weeks is actually the cheapest statistically. I'm not totally sure, it definitely varies by airline. And then as far as accommodation goes, I recommend booking at least your first, second, and third night, just so that you know that you have some place to stay when you get there. And it totally depends on whether it's high season or low season where you're traveling.